This is a broadcast from the Pop Cult Pod.
Welcome to the Pop Cult Pod. I'm your cult leader, Tom Pop, back with another edition of the podcast that I sometimes do and seemingly more often do not do because it has been a while since we've had an episode. Don't worry though, it is December. We normally do quite a few podcasts in December, and we of course will have one in January looking at the whole year. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's stick into here and now. What's fresh? What's new? What's news? I mean, it's not really new because some of this happened a while back, but I do want to discuss it all the same. I want to talk about news such as Lucasfilm apparently losing another director due to creative differences. I want to talk about Tom Holland, who is or is not Spider-Man, depending who you listen to. And of course, in our feature, I want to talk about Ghostbusters 3, why it never happened, and the many attempts they had at making it happen. That's all to come, but if you do want to use the time codes below, you can jump around. But we are going to jump up, and get down with the new news.
Not just news. Not just new news. But the new.
Well, there has been quite a bit of news since you're away. Something that happened now some time ago was Disney Plus Day. And I'm not going to go into everything that was revealed, mainly because there wasn't a lot revealed. I have detailed notes on the whole thing, but honestly, it's just a boring list. I want to talk about why I thought Disney Plus Day was a bit of a disaster, and maybe the minor thing or two that came out of it. So, I actually intended to do a full episode on Disney Plus Day. Last year I was going to do a full episode on Disney Investor Day, but of course, unfortunately, I had technical issues, so I had all my notes and I had to basically just throw it to one side. And it's actually reminiscent of my feelings on DC fandom this year, which again, I did a full episode on last year and intended to do a full episode on it this year. But then they happened. And they just weren't very good. I mean, I don't understand, because they were both excellent last year, but this year, there was just nothing interesting about them. And this is a complaint more about Disney Plus Day, I would say, than DC fandom. DC fandom, the problem was with it that, and I had this feeling as soon as it was announced, I was like, really, you're doing a second one? That I figured you wouldn't be doing it annually, but okay, let's see what you got. And the answer was kind of nothing, because it was like small updates on some things that weren't really ready to be shown. And as soon as they did put out a schedule, I was like, oh, that's weird. Oh, I guess it's just, here's everything because we don't have enough to have a proper schedule. So it was the sort of thing that, you know, if you can't do it every year, just don't do it every year. No one's expecting it every year. Or make DC fandom, you know, Warner Brothers Day or HBO Max Day or something, so you can expand and show everything you're working on as opposed to just a DC slate. The problem with Disney Plus Day were much more significant, in my opinion. First of all, last year we had Disney Investor Day. Disney Investor Day was really good. It revealed a lot of stuff we had no idea was happening. We got first looks at projects. They announced a load of things. And I mean, of course, there was stuff hidden behind a kind of a... I guess it was blacked out for people who were not shareholders. But that, generally speaking, was only a few things. The problem with Disney Plus Day, number one, was that it was nothing. That sounds like really reductive, but it wasn't. Disney, like, share or Investor Day last year was like, here's the conference, here's the video. What Disney Plus Day essentially was a Twitter thread, which is the least exciting way you can announce stuff ever. Like, keep in mind, when you're doing something like digitally, online, everyone can access it, so why not do that? This was basically like what you would see about Comic-Con when they couldn't stream Comic-Con. It was updates, but why do that? It's your conference. You can decide how it's going to be shown. They just didn't show anything. And what was more disappointing was that anything they did show was either something we kind of knew about or something they didn't just show off significantly in any way at all. So you found the Twitter thread and you were just basically refreshing it, and I made a note of everything they announced, but pretty much everything had been shown already last year or announced already last year. But then you're like, okay, well, hey, they talked about Cheaper by the Dozen. They're rebooting that, which they call it a classic movie. Come on, Disney. Classic movie. Cheaper Probably doesn't really. Which they announced last year has Zach Braff, Gabrielle Union. So you're like, okay. Oh, it's coming out in March. Well, let's see what the trailer. Maybe it looks good. Oh, you don't have a trailer. You have the two actors talking at the camera. That's not very... How is that going to get you excited to see Cheaper Probably Dozen? You already know these actors are in it. So it's like, you had a chance to get people's attention here and you didn't do it. And like, it's not that far away. It's like 3 months. I mean, we got a few trailers. We got a trailer for Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, which is like an Ice Age spin-off, which looked okay, but it was really, again, did feel like a watered-down version of Ice Age. Not that I'm like an Ice Age purist, but it did feel like Disney are like, okay, well, we don't need to... This is not our property originally, so we don't need to give it the full, you know, red carpet treatment. Let's just make something that looks passable and put it on Disney+. And again, look, it was Disney Plus Day, so we're not going to get announcements on everything that was theatrical. But even at Disney Investor Day last year, pretty much everything they announced had some strong connection to Disney Plus, or was going to Disney Plus. They showed off a Baymax trailer, which is a spin-off of Big Hero 6 coming in the summer next year. Looked fine. Looked kind of cute, you know. But then there was other things like big projects where you're like, this looks like it could be something exciting. Disenchanted. The big announcement there was, hey, now you can stream Enchanted. It's coming in the autumn, apparently. Disenchanted. But nothing from that. Okay, right. They talked about things that like we're getting really soon, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That's out by the time of this podcast comes out. The Peter Jackson Beatles documentary, I mean, that was out pretty soon after as well. It's same with like they showed like a lot of the Marvel stuff, which I'm going to get to. There was no point to it. Like they had a lot of random stuff. Like okay, Hocus Pocus the sequel. A lot of excitement about that, right? Here's a photo of the cast. That's it. Okay, right. Things like Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio film that we heard about last year. There was no update on that really. It's coming in the autumn of 2022. It's the equivalent of like, you know, when they're like, hey, here's what's coming this month on Netflix. It was that. But a long-term forecast. You didn't show us anything to get us excited about it. Like, and then there was a really random stuff that they also hinted at last year, which is like National this is becoming a weird subgenre. National Geographic specials series with celebrities in them for some strange reason, and they're both produced by Darren Aronofsky. For again, it's like word salad. There's just random mixture of words here. Chris Hemsworth has a series called Limitless with Chris Hemsworth, which is him just traveling around the world. Doing things like he's swimming in ice water, he's rope climbing, he's pulling carrots. Basically, it's just like, hey, Chris Hemsworth has no limit. It's basically like, hey, look how inferior you are to Chris Hemsworth. It's like I could have, you know, guessed that by looking at him, but it is just that thing where like, what is this show? What like, who I don't know who's going to watch this show really. It's just a very random one. Like you don't need it to be Chris Hemsworth, but if the only appeal is that it has Chris Hemsworth, then what's the point of the show at all? Then they have Welcome to Earth with Will Smith, which again they should have stopped at the title. That title is perfect, coming from Independence Day. That should have just been like a skit on Saturday Night Live. Will Smith hosts a nature show. Welcome to Earth. It's Will Smith goes on his holidays, from what I can tell, to extreme areas, and it's that thing where like the footage looks amazing, but I'm like, why is Will Smith here? It just doesn't really. He's abseiling. He's looking at volcanoes. He's going like. I don't know. It's just very odd. That's coming anyway. Actually, it might even be out by the time this podcast comes out, December 8th. It's just very strange. They showed off like a few other things, like the Proud Family, which, you know, I'm like, okay, fine, that's fine. I can barely remember the Proud Family, but it looked decent. The animation was like a nice kind of mixture of updated from the original, without kind of going, you know, crazy over the top and abandoning the style of the original, like say the Rugrats reboot did. Then they have like things like the Spiderwick Chronicles, which was nothing. It was like, hey, we're working on this, and it was concept art. It's like, okay, well that is nothing. But okay, but it really says something when what you show for your Spiderwick Chronicles show that no one knew about up until now, unless I'm forgetting something, is exactly what you show for your Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which has been in the works for ages, which has people already excited because. And they did this very oddly. They hid the trailer, in inverted commas, behind the paywall on Disney Plus, and you'd only know to find it if you actually were watching this Twitter thread, because you'd have to search Obi-Wan Kenobi, which again I thought the series was going to be called Kenobi or Obi-Wan. Apparently it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Man, which is a lot like, but. you have to search the show on Disney Plus to get this trailer, and the trailer, like, it was nothing really. It was concept art, and people and talking heads saying like, oh, this is, you should get excited about this, and like, oh, this person's back, and it's like, we knew this already. It was absolutely nothing, and hiding behind a paywall as if it was something really good is strange. And again, I understand they wanted people to sign up for Disney Plus out of this, but if you're trying to get them excited, give them something to be excited about. Don't say, hey, you should have to pay already if you want to see what you're going to get excited about. It's like, you don't pay to see the trailers in the cinema as well. You know what I mean? You pay to see the film. What you're, like... And again, it's a concept art trailer, so it was nothing. And again, it says a lot that that's what they did for a show they just announced and something that is coming. It was just really strange. On the other hand, there was something that I had no interest in. But again, they didn't show any footage, but I really loved, which was the Willow series. I have never seen Willow, but there's a series coming out of it in 2022, and they did like a cast featurette with Warwick Davis. I bust my ass. If you watch, honestly, not even joking, if you want to watch anything out of Disney Plus Day, watch this. This was the highlight for me. It was so funny. It has nothing to do with Willow, but it made me be like, hey, I'm going to give this a go because this was so great. It was like a weird cast featurette where Warwick Davis is basically big timing everyone. He's like, yeah, I'm Willow, motherfucker. Young, and he's like really egotistical, and he's going up to like these young pretentious actors who have no idea who he is, who have no idea what Willow is. It was just really funny. He came up like, Warwick Davis, man, is like so funny. If you've seen like Life's Too Short, the Ricky Gervais Stephen Merchant show, it really reminded me of this, where he's okay to be the butt of a joke, and he was just such a good sport about it. It was really, really funny. It might have been the best thing that came out of this whole thing, because it was actually something creative as well. Like, a lot of the stuff was just get excited about this, and the actors telling us why you should be excited. This is so something that was entertaining. This entertained me. Nothing else about Disney Plus Day really entertained me, to be honest. I mean, we had, like, for example, a movie I am excited for it. They have Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers with Andy Samberg, and oh god, who else is it? John Mulaney, which I've heard the movie is like off the wall, really meta. But they basically were just like, it's, you know, it's not a reboot, it's a continuation, and that was it. It's coming out like in a couple of months. You can't give us a picture, nothing. It's just very odd. Again, Pixar's one was really a disappointment as well. Pixar basically were like, hey, we're working on a Cars series. Wow. It's called Cars on the Road, which I'm like, cars are always on the road. I get what you're going for. But anyway, they're bringing back Owen Wilson and Larry the Cable Guy, so there you go, get her done. They also are going to have feature-length documentaries for their next films, which again only appeals to people who are really excited about Pixar already. So, you know, maybe you could have given them something that, if you weren't excited about Pixar, here's what we're working on. I know they put out a Lightyear trailer already, and it's not coming to Disney Plus, but it's just very odd. They put out a short film from that. What was that film they put out? What was the last? Oh god, I can't even remember that. That's not a good sign, is it? What was the last Pixar film they put out? The Italian one. Yeah, it's not a good sign that I can't remember the name of it already. It's gone. I don't know what it is. But they put out a short film based on that called Ciao Alberto. They put out artwork for their Pixar series called Win or Lose, which again, they announced last year. This was all they showed again. And then, like, a year on. What? Don't keep telling us about it if you have nothing to show for it. I mean, there was nothing else really major that I found very interesting. The weirdest thing they had was, like, they showed off this Argentinian series that's already streaming. And I think they were embarrassed it was Argentinian. Like, they were embarrassed it wasn't in English. Because anytime they try to show, like, the footage, they, like, it was dubbed, and they really very rarely showed, like, the person's lips moving. It was often like footage over voiceover. Oh, it was brilliant. I can't, what's it called? Oh, it's called Intertwined. It's like a weird Freaky Friday thing. I don't know. I've heard anyone talk about it before or since. So there's that. That's probably the most publicity it's got, me speaking about it. Aside from that, it was like Marvel stuff. Now again, think back to how many times Disney and Marvel have broken the internet with just a morsel of news. They put out a lot of stuff here, and they handled it so freaking badly, people didn't really care or seem to notice. If you wanted to see the first look at the rest of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, you had to go to Disney Plus, click on Marvel Disney Plus Day 2021, which was on the home screen like the day of, and it was a 14-minute video. and you had to basically sit through the whole thing. It recapped all the shows already, including Hawkeye, which was going to start like soon afterwards anyway, and then there was 2 minutes of footage. So yeah, it's behind a paywall, by the way. I don't think any of this stuff got any popularity on Twitter compared to some of the other Marvel stuff. They could have put this out on Twitter and it would have broken the internet. I'd put it this way. I recorded the new footage, put it up on Twitter, and it got over 100,000 views or something. It got nearly 5,000 likes. And people were still, nearly 2 weeks later, being like, holy shit, I hadn't seen this. Where'd this come from? Whoa. Because they botched the reveal. They put it behind a paywall. The people that are already have Disney Plus are going to stay subscribed if you give them something to be excited about. The people who don't have Disney Plus will sign up when there is something to be excited about. And you're basically saying if you want to get excited about Disney Plus, you have to pay for it already. You can't see what you're missing. It's just very strange. I don't understand what they were going for, but I guess we'll go through the Marvel reveals very quickly. They announced that they're rebooting the X-Men animated series, which is now dubbed X-Men 97, which is strange as a title, because I'm like, does that mean it's going to take place in 97? Are they aging the characters up? I guess it doesn't matter. I wouldn't have even thought about the year, to be honest, unless you'd call it X-Men 97. Could have just called it X-Men. X-Men Reborn, something shitty. X-Men Ressurrection. I don't know. It's just very, very odd, but a lot of people seem excited about that. Actually, look, it's nostalgia gone mad, obviously. It's nostalgia gone mad. But it's coming out in 2023. It did make me kind of go, maybe I'll watch the X-Men animated series. I wonder if that holds up. Aside from that, we got updated title cards for a lot of Marvel shows. I'll talk about some of them in a sec, the ones that were in the trailer. Actually, I suppose all of them were in the trailer to a certain degree. But we got very strange reveals here, because every show was revealed as coming soon. And again, it's like, what's your definition of soon, man? Because we got Moon Knight and She-Hulk. They updated their title cards and they said coming soon. But then Miss Marvel, it's like coming summer 2022. So does that mean like they're coming before Miss Marvel? I wouldn't have thought so. Are they coming after Miss Marvel? In that case, why are they coming soon but Miss Marvel isn't coming soon? Miss Marvel is actually got a date. It's just very strange. Echo was confirmed as we're getting a series. This is obviously our character that is normally a Daredevil character, but has just appeared in Hawkeye. And speaking of, if you do want to check out my breakdown on Hawkeye, I'm doing watch your episodes again every week. Do not miss them up. Make sure you check those out on YouTube. I'm having a blast doing them. And I've talked about why Echo is a very important character to all this, or as what is rumoured. So, again, interesting character, gave a spin-off. We have Spider-Man. Spider-Man fans are eating well these days. Spider-Man Freshman Years is an animated series that's coming to Disney+. So this could be how they... I don't know, again, this is one where I'm like, mixed feelings. Like, it's Spider-Man early on. Like, is that very, very interesting? Is this also going to be the introduction of Uncle Ben into the MCU? Because that's... I don't know if I'm happy with him being introduced this way, but I don't know. We have I Am Groot, which is an animated short. Again, they've been plugging this like 2 or 3 years now. I'm like... What like... It's an animated short. How excited do you want me to get for it? Same with the Guardians Holiday Special. Like I'll be excited about when it comes out, you know. We have Ironheart again. Nothing really. They updated the title card. It seems like they really just gave a few of these a new coat of paint, so people be like, "Whoa, look what they gave us!" Agatha House of Harkness, a spin-off to WandaVision, was officially announced. Not sure I want that show, to be honest. Doesn't seem really necessary, but sure, I'd probably watch it. Marvel Zombies is confirmed to be getting an animated series. This is a spin-off of What If. What If is obviously coming back for a second season. I think it was already, it produced 2 seasons anyway, so that's whatever. Secret Invasion, they showed like the logo, but the logo changed to scroll colors. Ooh, how long did that take us to put together? The day of. So we got a trailer then. This was like the last 2 minutes. Again, really strange strategy. So it showed off Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, and like I don't even know if you can call it a look at Secret Invasion, to be honest. But the most substantial one, the one that kicked off the trailer, was Moon Knight, and it was the best looking trailer. It looks really dark. Oscar Isaac is obviously playing Moon Knight. He has a weird Cockney accent in the trailer that a lot of people picked up on, which, you know, that's fine. I thought it was kind of entertaining. Obviously, Moon Knight is a character with a lot of split personalities, so that could be one of them. Or else they've gone with a really weird creative choice. It looks dark and it looks violent and brutal, which is not something that we often have seen in the MCU. It looks like something more akin to Daredevil. And we'll see how far Disney will go with it, though. Who knows? But it was interesting looking. One of the more interesting things coming out of it is that it confirmed the leak that came out a couple of months ago. We saw a leaked photo where it was Moon Knight full costume, including the cowl and the face, in the same setting in the trailer. So our first look at Moon Knight is out there through a leak. That might be more exciting than the trailer. But that was the best trailer. We got a tease of She-Hulk. And it didn't do much for me, if I'm honest. We got a look at Tatiana Maslany, but not really. It was like they showed her from like the back. They showed a bit of her legs. It was hard to tell like the scale, how big she actually was. And I'm not sure about the CGI, but it was too early to tell. We didn't see enough of it. The Hulk is in the trailer, and the Hulk looked great. So I'm hoping that that means that, you know, She-Hulk is going to look great as well. Again, the title art really made it look like kind of a like generic crime procedural, which is sort of what you want, I guess, a character. But they also hint at the more meta aspects. She's like is turning to the camera at one point. She's like, "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." So, again, hopefully there'll be more to it. They just didn't really show off enough to get me really excited. The biggest disappointment for me in the footage was Ms. Marvel, though, because this is a show I'm really excited for. And there's been a lot of rumours of production trouble on this one. That it was meant to be out a lot earlier, but now it's not coming out till the summer. It's been filming longer than a lot of these, and they didn't show a lot. We didn't get a look at the costume. We saw her kind of dressing as Captain Marvel. There's a glimpse of her getting her powers at some point, but we don't know. You know, we don't know how truthful it's going to be to her origins, or have they changed that? Apparently, they're going to change her powers in this, or certainly the depiction of her powers. It was just a bit underwhelming for me because we didn't get to see a lot that would really get you excited. It was a lot of like, oh, I'm going to be a superhero, and a bit of chat, but no real action shots. Again, this was your ace in the hole. This is why you made people sit through a 14-minute featurette. And what we got was like an out-of-focus look at the costume in the background, in the reflection of a building. That's nothing to go on. So why bother at all? Then they gave us Secret Invasion, which was just a basic. It might as well have been a picture of Samuel L. Jackson, because that was how short the footage was, where he's got a grey beard and he's a bit haggard looking. He has no eye patch on and a big bushy beard. And that was it. So yeah, Disney Plus Day for me did not work at all. Honestly, it didn't get me more excited for a lot of the stuff. And I'm a big Disney fan, I'm a big Marvel fan. And it didn't get me excited, and that's a real misstep on their part in my opinion. But either way, I'm sure I'll be back. But look, none of these brands are in trouble. I guess they can afford to, you know, slip and miss, and hopefully they'll learn from it and come back better next year. But it's not the only problem under the banner of the mouse, because we're now talking about Lucasfilm, because they've apparently lost another director, and this was actually announced at Disney Investor Day just a year ago. They've apparently lost Patty Jenkins, or fired Patty Jenkins, or they're going different ways. They're split up due to creative differences. Man, Lucasfilm losing a director due to creative differences, I promise this isn't a repeat. This is just the same old story, man. Because there was reports earlier that was like Patty Jenkins is off Rogue Squadron, and we were like, yeah, give it a day or two, creative differences. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, yes, we're right. And lo and behold, we were, because apparently that's what's happening. It's been delayed indefinitely. You know, delayed indefinitely until it's cancelled. In other words, this was a strange thing anyway. Lucasfilm are very reactionary. They hire whoever is the hottest name in the moment, but of course, by the time, you know, by the time they actually get around to making the things, they might be like, oh, I don't know about this person. Like, they hired Colin Trevorrow, and then he made Book of Henry, and they're like, nope. You know, like, who was the other one? They wanted Josh Trank, and then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, Fantastic Four is a bomb. Also he's apparently an asshole, but you know. And it's just becoming a recurring pattern where they don't know what to do with Star Wars in cinemas. And I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm starting to wonder, is this just the creative conflict that comes with them realizing that Star Wars' future for the moment is going to have to be on TV because they can't get it together? I mean, the last Star Wars movie we had was Rise of Skywalker, which was a critical disaster. It was a mess. They rushed it, apparently, and that's what we got. And again, that was a film that they also lost a director on. This was, in my opinion as well, or not my opinion, from what I can tell, this is pretty much the last Star Wars movie that was in development or in some sort of quick development. Like, Kevin Feige is working on a Star Wars movie, but there's no real information on that. Rogue Squadron was apparently meant to come out in 2023. Before Wonder Woman 3. And they announced this kind of, I think, just before Wonder Woman 84 started getting ravaged. So I wonder if that plays into it. I don't know, obviously, but it does raise a red flag. Rian Johnson's trilogy is also apparently not happening, as if we needed, to be told that, because of course they're reactionary. They were like, hey, we're going to give you this whole trilogy after The Last Jedi, and then people didn't like The Last Jedi, and they're like, oh, no, we're not doing that. They screwed up the spin-offs, the solo films, and I don't understand how you could mess this up so bad. And I'm not one of these people that's like, fire Kathleen Kennedy, because apparently she just re-upped the contract anyway, but I don't understand what they're going for, which is another weird thing, by the way. They announced like 10 Star Wars series at Disney Investor Day last year, and we only got an update on one of them at Disney Plus Day. I don't know what's going on at Lucasfilm, but anyway, the same report, as we mentioned, does mention that Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy has been shelved over creative differences. It's honestly becoming a bit of a joke. It's actually almost funny at this point. And look, I'm not going to come down on Patty Jenkins. I didn't like Wonder Woman 84, but I think she does have talent. And they obviously have a thing where they hired a director because they have an interesting viewpoint. They hired Patty Jenkins, no doubt, because her father was a fighter pilot, I think in the Navy. So you have an interesting director perspective there, and you're like, no, we don't want that. We want something this is what we want. If you want people who are just going to be yes men, go out and do that. Marvel have often done that, and that's not me coming down on Marvel. It's because they have a larger creative vision that they want to fulfill. I don't know what the vision of Star Wars is. They seemingly can get it together on TV for Disney Plus with Mandalorian, with Boba Fett. They can't get it together with film, because at the moment it's looking like there's not going to be a Star Wars theatrical film for quite some time, and it's not because of lack of interest. It's because of pure incompetence, which is a joke. But anyway, speaking of creative differences, let's talk about Adam McKay and Will Ferrell. I think we actually reported on this maybe last year, or around this time last year, which is that they dissolved their partnership. Oh, it was 2019. Jesus, that was a long time ago. So they dissolved their partnership a few years ago. And I think we were all like, ooh, why? Because the whole thing was like, hey, look, we're going very different directions. And they were, to be fair. Adam McKay was kind of making more serious, dramatic stuff. Will Ferrell, I guess, wasn't. He was being Will Ferrell. And I think we were all kind of like, well, there's probably more to it, as believable as that is. And seemingly there was, because according to Adam McKay, they kind of got in an argument. They had like a really successful production company, Gary Sanchez Productions. And again, it was like, things must be bad if they're dissolving the production company, because that's money for old rope. I think the excuse at the time was he was kind of like, I don't want us to ever be like, we're expanding so much, I don't want us to be producing something I mean not to be aware of. I think that was what Will Ferrell said. But basically, seemingly what happens is that Will Ferrell was cast in a role of the Los Angeles Lakers owner in the series Showtime, which is something that Adam McKay is working on for HBO. It's about the Lakers. Insanely amazing cast. And they gave the part to Will Ferrell. But apparently, Adam McKay didn't want Will Ferrell in the role. He wanted, John C. Reilly. And it seems like, even though he was kind of not the first choice, he wanted it to be kind of, he wanted it to be kind of amicable. He didn't want, look, it's really confusing. It's that kind of thing where, like, if they were both grown-ups, this could have been resolved, Basically, what happened is, he was like, Will Ferrell I don't see as this, I'd prefer John C. Reilly. So he ended up casting John C. Reilly, but he never told Will Ferrell about it beforehand. And it kind of sounds like John C. Reilly kind of approached Will Ferrell and told him before anyone. And that's why it came back to Adam McKay. He was kind of like, hey, they're recasting you, by the way. And that was kind of the end of it for him. Basically, he ended up recasting John C. Reilly in the role. And because of that, things were not great. They basically split up. They had a phone call. That was kind of like the last time they spoke. And I was like, we're splitting up the company. And he was like, yep, that was it. Which it's beyond that, they've said that what's gone on is like, Will Ferrell isn't answering Adam McKay's emails anytime he's tried to reach out. Which, paints him in sympathetic light. But at the same time, Adam McKay has said, like, anytime I do, like, I emailed him once and I kind of said, like, look, these are issues I have with you as well. So let's not, we've both been wronged here, which I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. I mean, I've heard Will Ferrell can be difficult and isn't the most pleasant person in general. Again, I don't want to get into speculation or whatever, but Adam McKay seems pretty wrong in this situation. It's kind of unprofessional. Even though this is something that happens in Hollywood all the time, where people kind of find out they're fired online. But it's such a shame, because these guys obviously made some massive comedy hits together, and even though their careers have gone different directions, you kind of hope that they would get back together, but it's seemingly not going to go that way. But the fact that, Adam McKay said this publicly, I think he's trying to pressure on Will Ferrell to kind of patch things up, but I think they actually do have some shows still on TV under their production company, but it's kind of a shame. People that kind of basically helped each other's career for about 2 decades. I mean, for a while one couldn't exist without the other, it seemed like, and now it is what it is, which is sort of a shame. But we're going from one director driven story to another, with 3 stories about directors in a row. This time it's that Lethal Weapon 5 has found a director. Oh boy, this is going to be a controversial one. First of all, last episode we did was about Richard Donner and his passing. I watched all the Lethal Weapon movies, and I enjoyed them. They're great. I like the characters, I like the films, but I mean, they did basically make the same movie every single time. They're just very entertaining. And they ran out of ideas by like Lethal Weapon 2. We don't need a Lethal Weapon 5 at all. I said that years back on the podcast when Richard Donner was still alive, and he was talking about, was it Lethal Finale is what he was going to call it? Like, not a good title, not a good idea. Leave it die. I mean, they actually both are too old for this shit at this point. But apparently, according to the Hollywood Reporter, Mel Gibson is going to direct Lethal Weapon 5. And that this stemmed from a conversation he had with Richard Donner, who said, like, if I die, you make the movie. Now, it's strange because, first, look, Mel Gibson is a horrible person. I don't think I'm surprising anyone. That's not the story here. It's very obvious he shouldn't kind of still have the work he does. Now, on the other hand, he is a very good director, so maybe he can make a good Lethal Weapon film. But the question is, does anyone want a Lethal Weapon film now? Like, does anyone really want, like... I know they had a TV series, but even the TV series got cancelled eventually, and even everyone on that was apparently shit, because I think by the end of it, like, Riggs and Murtaugh weren't even in it, because both actors had problems on sets. It's like, why do this, though? I know that the kind of soft reboot has always worked, but, like, we don't need this movie at all. It just seems like, why are you going to do this? The fact that Richard Donner has passed makes it even more pointless to make it. But, I mean, I don't know, does Danny Glover really need a paycheck? I mean, help him out. But at the same point, I'm like, we're getting Mel Gibson as a director and an actor, and they're making another Lethal Weapon, which we don't need. Like, it's going to be hard to watch, crazy Riggs when we're like, oh yeah, he's actually crazy and anti-Semitic and a racist and whatever, add whatever horrible ist you can to his name, and it probably fits. It just is so pointless. We don't need another Lethal Weapon, man. Leave it die. We've gotten nearly 2 decades without another Lethal Weapon. Just maybe we can just leave it be for now. But strangely enough, it's not the only film that we thought we were done with. The only film series I thought we were done with that we're getting another one of. Because when I say The Last Dance, you might think of, Michael Jordan, but instead you're now going to think of Magic Mike. We're getting another Magic Mike, folks. Why am I talking about this story? Warner Bros. Has announced that they're developing a 3rd installment in the Magic Mike series. Channing Tatum is back to play Magic Mike. Mike Lane is what it says here. I guess that's his name. Mike Lane. Kind of a boring name, but okay. And Steven Soderbergh is back to direct it, which Steven Soderbergh, man, he's fascinating to me. Like, his career is all over the map, and he's like, I'm retiring, and then he's like, okay, but I'm going to make a trilogy of Magic Mike first. Oh, God bless him. So they're making Magic Mike's Last Dance, and it's not going to cinemas, it's going to HBO Max. So I guess that is why this is happening, because they're like, we need properties people know. People know Magic Mike. Put it on HBO Max. People will love it. Magic Mike. So yeah, Magic Mike's Last Dance. It sounds very dramatic, doesn't it? It's coming next year. It's one of those films that's been a pretty successful smaller film, so I guess putting it on HBO Max does make sense. Is it going to draw people in? I don't know, but it's something that people recognize. Magic Mike's, or not Magic Mike, Channing Tatum said, there are no words for how excited I am to blow the doors off the world of Magic Mike. With Stephen, Greg, Reed, and the amazing people at HBO Max, the Stripperverse will never be the same. Oh, we're about to blow the doors off the Magic Mike universe. Whoa, maybe he's got some new terrible off pants. What do you call those? Snap pants? I don't know. The Stripperverse as well. Oh, maybe you can cross that and Hustlers over, and we can get a real stripper cinematic universe going. The SCU. SCU. Speaking of cinematic universes, Tom Holland has been talking, and not always positively, but he's such a young, charming young chap. Surely he's only got positive things to say. Well, not lately, because in what everyone immediately chalked off as, oh, contract must be up, he's been like, maybe I don't want to be Spider-Man when I'm 30. Maybe I'm done. Maybe, you know, I'm... what's Tom Holland sound like? You know, maybe I don't want to be Spider-Man. Maybe I want to make films. If I'm playing Spider-Man by the time I'm 30... I sound like someone from the Jeremy Kyle show. Maybe he's like, maybe I'm done playing Spider-Man. AKA, pay me my money. Give this man his money. Because... but it's also really strange. I find those all... like, because Robert Downey Jr. did this, I think. And a lot of other people have done it when their contracts are coming up. And it's really obvious when it happens. But also, like, there's some things you have to be careful. You say, like, where he's like, if I'm playing Spider-Man, I'm 30. You know, I messed up. And he's, you know, probably going to be playing Spider-Man when he's 30. So, so like, what changed, Tom? This has been all over the shop. Because he said that. And then Amy Pascal, who is a very odd woman anyway. I'm not going to say she's a mouthy broad. But I'm going to say, because that sounds awful. I'm trying to think of a nice way I can put it, though. She shoots her mouth. She's a mouthy broad. No, she always like speaks her mouth in interviews and in the Sony emails. She didn't come off very well there from memory. But like, remember like when Spider-Man Homecoming came out and the Marvel deal was still pretty young, and we were like, oh, I wonder where this is going to go. Is this going to end amicably? Oh. And she was just like, yeah, we're part of the MCU now. And she's sitting next to Kevin Feige, and Kevin Feige looks like straight ahead. Like... like there's going to be like she's going to be shot by Stan Lee for saying such a thing. It's like she just says things without thinking. The other thing is she's not at Sony anymore. This is the end of her involvement. As soon as Tom Holland and this iteration of Spider-Man ends, she's not involved with any Sony stuff going ahead as far as I know. So she has a vested interest in keeping this going. Because of course Spider-Man No Way Home is going to come out very soon, and it's going to be the biggest film ever, seemingly, or a massive success if nothing else. So she was like, yeah, we're making another trilogy with Marvel, and, you know, Tom Holland's coming back, and it was like, well, that came out of nowhere. And then Tom Holland, I guess, because maybe some agent was like, hey, you're going too hard on this, I don't want to be playing Spider-Man for everything. He was like in an interview at a French talk show, and he kind of said, oh, he's 25, by the way, so if he's playing Spider-Man in 5 years, he'll have fucked up. But when you think about it, he has actually only been playing Spider-Man for like 5 years, 2016, 2021, which is crazy when you think about it. Especially considering, like, that means, I mean, I think Tobey Maguire played it for 5 years as well, and only got 3 movies out of it. So, if he, 5 years, he's had 6 movies, which is crazy. But this is kind of what they wanted. This is why they cast young Spider-Man, so they could kind of get their use out of him, that he could be going through long arcs and be around for ages. And especially it's interesting to have him in the MCU at the point he's in, where he's, now kind of one of the foremost Avengers, I guess, with all these new people coming in, even though he is quite young. But anyway, he was asked about the kind of rumours of a new trilogy, and it sounds like basically, we're going to work on a deal. They've offered me something, but I haven't put pen to paper. So he said, all I'd say is we have some very, very exciting things to be talking about. I don't know what those things are or what they will transpire to mean, but it looks like it's an incredibly bright future ahead. And I said before, Spider-Man will forever live in me. Interesting choice to say there's very exciting things, but I don't know what there are. It's like he's on the fence, isn't it? He's like, you know what, being Spider-Man would be really great, but you know what isn't great? Being Spider-Man. Oh, bless him. Bless Tom Holland. Yeah, he's definitely signed a new contract, and I'm pretty sure he's going to come back. But, for the moment we have kind of Schrodinger's Spider-Man. Is he Spider-Man? Is he not in Spider-Man? With a film coming out, I suppose within that realm, he is definitely Spider-Man. But as soon as that film is over, he goes into a state of not being Spider-Man, being Spider-Man. There you go. I'll explain Schrodinger's cat. This is an educational podcast, an edutainment podcast. But anyway, that is our new news. We are going to talk, though, about some of the trailers that we have lately. So, because of that, we're going to take a quick trip and check out the trailer trash.
This is the theme for trailer.
This is the theme for trailer. This is the theme for trailer trash. Get in the bin.
Get in the bin.
Trailer trash. Okay. First trailer I want to talk about is very, very odd. We got a trailer for Jurassic World Dominion. But it's not a trailer for Jurassic World Dominion. It's a prologue. Now, I've seen a lot of people kind of misreport this one in a couple of different ways. This is a 5-minute trailer. I believe it was put out... Was it put out with Fast 9 this year, maybe? To get people into cinemas? But it's very strange because it's not in the movie. And I've seen some people suggest it is. But it isn't. It's a 5-minute prologue that goes back to how the fly, what was it called? That bug, the mosquito, got stuck in the amber to begin with. And then it cuts to like the modern day, where they're like basically watching some film and a dinosaur attacks them. Because of course at the end of the last Jurassic World film it was like dinosaurs are everywhere now. And then it ends. Was that meant to get... like, some people were like, oh yes, this is what I want. I'm like, okay, well, they showed us something we didn't really need to see. I don't need to see how, how the mosquito, sucked the blood of a dinosaur because, they kind of explained it already. I get it. There's nothing exciting about that. The appeal of just seeing a big dinosaur has long worn off with this franchise. The only thing that was new to offer was showing it kind of smashing the city, even though we've seen that as well. But you could have shown a city overrun with dinosaurs. No, you gave us one dinosaur in the city, which has been the second Jurassic Park did it. It's just not for... It did nothing for me. It didn't get me more or less excited for the film, which is a real shame, but it was just a very odd choice to be like, hey, we're going to put out something that's not in the film at all. Do you like this? It's not in the film. You'll never see it again unless you watch the trailer again. Brilliant. Thanks for that. But we did get another thing. And this trailer definitely had me feeling deja vu because we got another trailer for The Matrix Ressurrections. And, this is one of those movies where I have no idea where I'm going to land on it because I've never finished the sequels. I've never been able to sit through them. I'm going to try again. And it kind of feels like this movie is a soft reboot of The Matrix because it is going over all those elements again. And this trailer makes it very clear because there's honestly so much going on in it and also nothing going on in it. It's showing all this footage from the new film and then footage from the old films, and it's like doing split screens and it's doing like all these transitions, so it's like, oh wow, look how similar the footage is. So I guess they're basically saying, remember the Matrix? This is the Matrix. But it also makes me kind of go like, I have no idea what I'm meant to be getting out of this. I don't know whether I'm meant to be excited for this new Matrix film or what it actually is. It feels like a reboot of The Matrix, no pun intended. But it also feels like they don't know how to market the film. And also that we're just getting the same thing again. Which I guess is alright. But it kind of reads to me like, hey, forget about the sequels. We're just going to go with, remember the first film is kind of like that. So I don't know what I'm getting here. Am I more excited for seeing this trailer? Yeah, strangely. Because I thought the effects and the editing of the trailer was really nice, which I didn't really care as much for the first trailer. A lot of people lost their minds at it. It might force me to sit and watch the prequels, or not the prequels, the sequels. But I mean, it's out in like 3 weeks. There's not as much buzz around this as I thought there would be. Maybe it's because it's going to HBO Max. Maybe it's because Spider-Man is sucking up all its buzz. I mean, it comes out 5 days after Spider-Man. And I do think the problem is going to be people will go to the cinemas to see Spider-Man and then they'll watch The Matrix online or on HBO Max. Especially depending on reviews. There was a lot of early word that it's mixed, to put it mildly. But anyway, we're getting really heavy into the Spider-Man world. As I guess you could say, we've gone really into the Spider-Verse, which we are with the sequel, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's like it was rumoured before, but it's now been officially unveiled. What's more interesting, it was revealed at Brazilian's Comic-Con CCXP, is that it's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Which I was like, whoa, okay. that's a pretty big gamble to do that with an animated film. But good on ya. It sounds like basically Lord and Miller like were writing and we're like, there's enough here for 2 films, let's split it up. So it does feel like a 2-parter, and that's why they're doing it. They've also said that it seems like the second part is going to come out in 2023. So that's good. It feels like they at least have a roadmap here. It's not like part 1, oh, we're not going to get to do part 2. Oh man, what film series is that? Was it Allegiant? Was it Divergent? So Divergent series where they're like, part 1, I want part 2. Maybe we'll do it for TV. And all the actors were like, no, we're not doing that on TV. And they're like, okay, we're done. Oh, I remember YA novel films, and they split them all into 2 parts and none of them worked. Oh man. Anyway, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 is coming out in October. We got our first look at it, and it's very interesting because it was mostly a clip that at first I was like, is this taken up directly after the last film? Because it does start like the last one ended, which was Miles lying on his bed, and we kind of see the Spider-Verse open up above him when we hear Spider-Gwen's voice, and it does start like that, but seemingly he's aged up this time. He's a bit older, a bit wiser, hopefully. The other thing is odd is that like the animation is a little bit different. I don't know if I'm as big a fan of it. It seemed a lot brighter and less textured maybe, but again, it's hard to go off just one clip. The so like that's most of the trailer. Most of the trailer is a clip where they're just talking and they're like, hey, we gotta go, and he's like, I can't, I'm grounded, and she's like, is Spider-Man grounded? And he's like, ho, dual identity, I can get out of here. And that's kind of how it ends. But then we see a brief glimpse of a few other moments in the film, which really showed off the kind of cool and different animation, which is what I loved about the first film. We saw him swinging through the city, and then he gets kind of sideswiped, attacked by Spider-Man 2099 Miguel O'Hara, who we saw in the post-credit scene of the last film, played by Oscar Isaac. And he kind of gets attacked, so I was like, oh, is this going to be the villain? Is there going to be another villain? Is it going to be what it always is, which, to quote the Weekly Planet podcast, they punch her a bit, then they're mates, which seems like it could be the case. My question and my thought coming out of this was, is this series just going to be the Spider-Verse? Because by the time this is done, 3 of the animated Spider-Man films will be like the Spider-Verse, which is basically just, I'm Spider-Man, here are all the other Spider-Men. And after a while it's like, I mean, are you going to show us something that is like the Spider-Verse is such a tiny part of Spider-Man? Are we going to just get a traditional animated film? And I don't know how you can't really put that back in the bottle after 3 films about the Spider-Verse. But look, I give them the benefit of the doubt. I said doubt. That sounds very Shakespearean. I give them the benefit of thy doubt, for they have procured a fine film the first time around. No, I mean, like, the first film was excellent, so I can't really take it away from them. The second film, I'm sure, will be great. Lord and Miller are fantastic, and I guess the second and third film, so I hope the second film is good, because otherwise they'll be like, oh, I'm not checking out that third film. But it's coming out October 7th. Got a first look at the footage, showed off the cool animation style. It is that thing where, like, it's hard to be too enamored and impressed by it because, it looks like the last film. So there wasn't much to take away from it. I'm noticing a theme here with all these trailers. They're like, hey, I remember the first film. Jurassic Park. Oh yeah. Oh, that's the fly that got the blood. Yeah, they mentioned that in the first film. Thanks for that. It's not in this movie. Okay, well, it wasn't in any of the movies. There was no need to show us it because we knew about it already. Oh, The Matrix. Oh yeah, that's footage from the first film. Yeah, this one's going to be like the first film. Okay, Into the Spider-Verse. Oh yeah, looks like the first film so far. Thanks for that. Did I just kind of become self-aware that I'm just being nostalgia-baited? Anyway, that is our trailer trash. Speaking of nostalgia bait, we're about to dive into our feature this week. And our feature, we just had the release of Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is Ghostbusters 3, or is it? Who knows? But we are, of course, going to dive into the many attempts to get a third Ghostbusters film with the original cast made and why it never happens. Speaking of Ghostbusters Afterlife, I have a review on my channel if you do want to check it out. But until then, check out my feature, Hellraiser, Ghostbusters 3. When we talk about movies in development hell, there's probably no film more synonymous with the term than Ghostbusters 3. And despite the fact it never went anywhere, we still got decades of rumours, of possibilities, of false starts. And unfortunately, like many other films in development hell, we got a definitive end that meant we were never really going to get the third Ghostbusters film that we all hoped for. This is Hellraiser, Ghostbusters 3. The first Ghostbusters film was a mammoth success. It was the second highest grossing film of 1984, falling just $5 million short of Beverly Hills Cop. In fact, before the release of Beverly Hills Cop at the end of the year, it was the highest grossing comedy film of all time. Even when adjusted for inflation, Ghostbusters falls just behind Avengers Infinity War as far as its domestic gross. Just to give you an idea of how massive this film was, the film also inspired a range of merchandise at a time when merchandising for a film was still a novel idea. And while Star Wars proved the possibility, Ghostbusters helped confirm it. It spawned a cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, which exploded the merchandising potential, and by 1988 they had generated $200 million in revenue from merchandise. And in that same year, the Proton Pack was the most popular toy in the UK. Without surprise, a sequel was always going to happen, and in 1989 it arrived with Ghostbusters 2.
Ghostbusters! Yes, that's right! Ghostbusters! We're back!
Very simply put, Ghostbusters 2 was a mess. Despite the success of the original film, things did not come together quickly or neatly for a sequel. Firstly, a sequel needed the approval of 4 people to occur. Director Ivan Reitman, co-writers and performers Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd, and famously, Bill Murray. Something that would be a kind of point of contention for many fans over the years, as he continued to be a holdout on a third film. However, in the case of Ghostbusters 2, a problem was the fact that since the release of the first film, he had largely stepped away from acting, aside from the odd cameo, partly due to the explosive success of Ghostbusters, but also because his passion project, The Razor's Edge, had flopped shortly after the release of Ghostbusters. In fact, one of his main reasons for doing Ghostbusters was so that The Razor's Edge would be greenlit. But frustrated with his failure, Murray took a break from acting until 1988's Scrooged. For a while, even Murray's return to acting didn't guarantee another film though. There were some grievances between the 4 key figures of the series that needed to be addressed. Once those were ironed out, the film was a go, with Murray deciding to return upon reflecting on how much fun he had making the original and putting his disdain for sequels aside, but in retrospect it seems that disdain may have been justified.
Our next film is Ghostbusters 2, the sequel to the best-selling movie comedy of all time, and it's a major disappointment. And what's so surprising is that the film contains little comic energy or invention. It looks as if the filmmakers, particularly the writers, simply didn't try to do anything special.
Ghostbusters 2 was released in June of 1989, in one of the most legendary years in blockbuster cinema. It was also the year with the most sequels to date, including the likes of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, The Karate Kid Part 3, Star Trek V The Final Frontier, and Lethal Weapon 2. Along with original successes like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Dead Poets Society, and of course the box office behemoth and #1 domestic film of the year, Batman. That is to say, it was a competitive year, with films often competing for success. In fact, Ghostbusters 2 opened just a week before Batman. Ghostbusters 2 actually broke a record for a 3-day gross, which was broken the following weekend by Batman. While this certainly didn't help the film's chances, neither did the film's quality. If we're totally honest, Ghostbusters was lightning in a bottle that they probably have never captured again since. It's a miracle it worked at all. But for the next film, it took Ramis and Aykroyd some time to crack the script. At first they wanted something entirely different to the original film. They wanted to take it out of New York, but then they sort of decided against that. There's some suggestion that the studio wanted something that was far more identical to the first film, which is pretty evident when watching the second film, because it somehow manages to be far too similar and yet inferior in every way. Another thing that massively impacted the film was that since the release of their first movie, we had the release of the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, which made the brand a bit more child-friendly and sanitized, something which the sequel aimed to emulate. The film was also just way too rushed, especially compared to the first film. It went through extensive reshoots and rewrites just 2 months before its release. It was a mess. And of course, because of that, it underperformed critically and commercially. And while it does have its fans, most agree that it pales in comparison to the original, and that in following it so closely, it showed its weaknesses even more. This is just one of the reasons, though, why I feel like going into the context of Ghostbusters 2 seems necessary in talking about why another entry was never made after the disappointments of the second film, and why Bill Murray and perhaps even audiences were dissuaded with the series. But furthermore, it should also serve as a reminder that even if we had got another Ghostbusters film, there is a good chance it wouldn't have been any better. But that didn't seem to stop them from trying, because they did try. A lot. Well, there's no doubt some thought was given to another film immediately after Ghostbusters 2 and the years after. The first draft for what was the most notable attempt to make Ghostbusters 3 with the original creative team was titled Ghostbusters Hellbent and dated March 10th, 1999. The script written by Aykroyd was very literal in its title. The film took place a few years after Ghostbusters 2. Not only is hell real in the Ghostbusters universe, but it's also apparently none too different from New York, with it being dubbed Manhattan, a dark mirror to the actual New York. Hell has become overpopulated, so much so that people are being evicted from hell to roam the world of the living once more. This forced the Ghostbusters to go to hell, whereupon they meet the devil himself, who in the film seems to be a Trumpian business mogul named Mr. Siffler. First name Luke. Luke Siffler. Subtle, Dan. Real subtle. This was a role that later Aykroyd would insist he wanted to be played by Alec Baldwin. That was kind of the broad strokes of the plot. However, we know other ideas in the script, such as Ghostbusters having become a massive company by now, with fleets of ectomobiles and plenty of employees to maintain the cars and bust ghosts. They also have other vehicles, including an Ecto-50, which seemingly is some sort of containment unit on wheels. All the Ghostbusters are featured in the film. We don't know what many of them are up to, aside from the fact that Winston has now become a doctor. There's also cameos from Louis Tully and Janine, but there's no mention, strangely, of Dana Barrett or her son from the second film, despite there once being a lot of rumours that her son, Oscar, would be taking up the role of a new Ghostbuster. It's here where we should also point out two of the seemingly mainstays of a potential third Ghostbusters film, or at least long-rumoured ones. The first was that a third Ghostbusters film would introduce new recruits, a younger cast to help carry the series forward for a new generation. Depending on when you read about the development of the Ghostbusters 3 film, the names are swapped out with some of the top comedic actors of the day, ranging from Chris Farley and Adam Sandler to Jack Black and Ben Stiller. It's not clear exactly who, if any of these actors, were in mind for these roles, mainly as the scripts would go through a range of rewrites, and much of this may have been an internet speculation. However, we do have descriptions of what these characters looked like in the Aykroyd script. We had Frankie, a tough, Pierce, New Jersey punk, Lovell, a dreadlock dude, Moira, an uptight science grad and gymnast, Carla, a Latino beauty, finally Nat, a prepubescent genius with a powerful brain and enlarged head as a result. Despite being younger, he also leads these new Ghostbusters, or GBs as the script refers to them as, and a common complaint was that the characters in the film hardly felt distinct, and we learned very little about them, and there was little conflict or characterization to them. But the second recurring factor to a third Ghostbuster film that we seem to always hear is the Bill Murray inclusion, or possibly exclusion. As mentioned earlier, he was hesitant to be involved with Ghostbusters 2 and never liked making sequels, seeing them as cash grabs and rarely having artistic merit. With the reaction to Ghostbusters 2, he was seemingly proven correct. It seems there's never been any version of a third Ghostbusters film where he would have a prominent role. Rumours have circulated for years about the extent of his interest or disdain. They've ranged from him turning down a 5-minute cameo, to agreeing if he's killed off in the beginning and allowed to be a ghost for the duration of the movie, to the rumour that he once received a script, shredded it, and posted it back to Dan Aykroyd.
Keep hearing talk about a Ghostbusters 3, but you...
It's a nightmare. Yeah, this is my nightmare.
Really? Now, will you be in Ghostbusters 3?
I told them if they killed me off in a first reel, I'd do it.
Right.
Considering the deal that all four needed to agree to a film, it seemed for years that his lack of interest in the project was one of a few factors that made it impossible. That being said, he wasn't the only person seemingly none too interested about returning to the world of Ghostbusters. Ivan Reitman apparently was not going to come back as director, although some suggestions say that he may produce with Ramis directing, as by now he was more interested in that than acting anyway. The hard truth to swallow with Ghostbusters 3 though, is that it seems nobody was all that interested in the film. Quality-wise, the script wasn't seen as anything special, with Reitman later admitting he couldn't fix the script, and at a later stage Ramis said that working on the script was more of a hobby. It felt like a film that they knew could never get made. It was very passively developed throughout the 90s. By the close of the decade and the start of the new millennium, Aykroyd said that the film would likely cost $120 million, something no one was ever likely to finance, especially in a Ghostbusters movie without Bill Murray. Not to mention that Sony likely saw the egg on Universal's face when they allowed Aykroyd to sequelize a beloved project of his that no longer had one of its main stars when they made Blues Brothers 2000, a critical and commercial bomb that pretty much confirmed that Dan Aykroyd's star had fallen very far indeed. Pretty much the last update we get on a potential adaptation of Ghostbusters Hellbent was in 2007, when it was mentioned that they may adapt it to a fully CG film, which apparently would have made the budget a bit more reasonable and was also more appealing to Bill Murray, but it never fully materialised. One problem as well that we have when discussing Ghostbusters Hellbent is that most of our details of its film come from a first draft, which was rumoured to be labelled as a disaster by the studio. There are apparently at least 3 drafts of the script, which may have led to the conflicting information that we always see reported online. Regardless though, it's an interesting project in speaking about development hell, because it really feels like at least the real Ghostbusters 3, Ghostbusters Hellbent, was never in any real active development. It was just in hell, I guess. It seems like just vague ideas and rumours in a half-formed script that only ever seemed to be hyped up when Dan Aykroyd was asked about it. While it never seemed to gain any real traction, or at least the version from the original team never did, that wasn't the end of attempts to make Ghostbusters 3. Want Ghostbusters 3? But that draft ain't good. Who are you going to call? Well, according to Columbia Pictures, you call producers of The American Office and writers Lee Eisenberg and Gene Stupnitsky. They had worked with Harold Ramis on what would be a future box office and critical disappointment in year one, but on paper, it made perfect sense.
Basically, because I was already working with Gene and Lee, we hammered out a story together. And the studio signed off on the story, and Dan Aykroyd signed off. We will come to everyone with the first draft. Gene and Lee will knock it out.
They had big success with The Office and a history of working with one of the writers of the original Ghostbusters, and due to this, in September 2008, news broke that they would be tasked with scripting a new Ghostbusters film. At this point, it was still unclear, though, if the original cast would return. But as with all versions of a third film, it would focus on passing the torch to a new and younger cast. One major reason for this being such a prominent feature of the scripts, aside from the age of the original cast, though, was that contractually, so much of the gross was pledged to those involved with the series that it was almost impossible to be a successful project for the studio. But this problem could be avoided with a new cast, yet there still seemed to be a major drive to get the original cast back in the film. Once again, the question was raised about whether or not Bill Murray would don the jumpsuit. While Eisenberg and Stupnitsky worked on the script, there were also drafts rewritten by Aykroyd, and eventually even Ramis and Reitman are said to have helped in subsequent drafts. Despite there being no clear indication that Murray would return, it was said that the script was very much focused on Peter Venkman. Ramis insisted that all 4 Ghostbusters were committed to the film though. Yet on the other hand, Murray allegedly told Reitman that leading roles no longer interested him, and he was more interested in small roles, something that wouldn't work if he was essential to the script as was reported. However, coming into the 2010s, it seemed like Murray's resistance to Ghostbusters was sort of softening. With Zombieland in 2009, they had heavily talked about and referenced his portrayal of Peter Venkman, and he even accepted a Scream Award on the film's behalf in 2010, dressed in the full Ghostbusters getup. Of course, he had also reprised the role of Peter Venkman for the Ghostbusters video game in 2009, so perhaps this would be a turning of the tide for a third Ghostbusters film. But maybe that was not meant to be. While it seemed we would get frequent insistence that the script was being worked on or refined, it never seemed to gain much momentum. Years later, when the film was very much dead, Lee Eisenberg was asked about his work on the script, stating, "We worked on Ghostbusters for 4 years. It got very close. At one point, I think it was greenlit contingent on Bill Murray doing it. And then Bill Murray did not do it. Bill Murray, I don't think, read it." Once again, Murray's lack of interest meant Ghostbusters 3 was once again going nowhere. But once again, they weren't done trying to make a third film. By 2012, Ethan Coen had been hired to write the script. Coen at this point had writing credits that included Idiocracy, Tropic Thunder, and another franchise that returned for a third entry after a lengthy hiatus, Men in Black 3. That being said, his later work included Get Hard and Holmes and Watson, so maybe they dodged a bullet in not getting this one made. Murray and Aykroyd publicly spoke about the new script being worked on and insisted that it needed to be good or there was no point of doing it. Aykroyd also spoke about how he had contributed some changes to the script. Interestingly, he also stated that Reitman, who had long been resistant to another film, had worked with Coen and that he was totally on board with a third film, and that even Murray had shown interest in seeing the script. Yet they did account for the unreliability of getting Murray to return, and as such there was flexibility in the script. From the outside looking in, it seemed like there was finally some momentum on a third Ghostbusters film. Aykroyd hoped that by the autumn of 2013 the film would be in production and to start shooting the following year, 2014. But unfortunately in 2014, we'd get the news that meant that for many people, and particularly Ghostbusters fans, that a third film, at least the one we all dreamed of, would never truly happen.
The world has lost a comedy icon.
One of Hollywood's most successful filmmakers has died.
He was a Hollywood heavyweight and hometown hero who made us laugh with comedy classics like Ghostbusters and Groundhog Day.
This was a very sad day among those who are normally the funniest people in American life. That's because Harold Ramis died today.
Harold Ramis has spent the last few years fighting something far scarier and more real than ghosts. For years he'd suffered from a disease called autoimmune inflammatory vasculitis, in which the body's immune system mistakenly attacks blood vessels, forcing some organs and tissue to not get enough blood or oxygen. It was a disease that doesn't have a cure and didn't even have a lot of research done on it. It was a very rare disease. As a result, there was a time where he actually was unable to walk, and while he relearned to walk, the disease continued to ravage his body. And perhaps seeing where this was going to go and being urged by his brother Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray went to meet Harold Ramis, which was a pretty significant step and possibly a contributing factor in why Ghostbusters 3 wasn't made, was that Harold Ramis and Bill Murray had had a falling out while making Groundhog Day 20 years ago, and they hadn't spoken since. And when Bill Murray went to see Harold Ramis, the disease had attacked him so much that he actually was no longer able to speak, or was only able to do so with great difficulty. And as such, Bill Murray did a lot of the talking, and they buried the hatchet and made amends and reminisced on old times. And shortly after, on February 24th, 2014, Harold Ramis passed away from complications with the disease at the age of 69. Tributes were paid from his co-stars, to his many inspirations, and even from President at the time, Barack Obama. Fans left flowers at Hook and Ladder Company 8's firehouse, where the Ghostbusters had set up operations to mourn the death of Egon Spengler and to mourn the loss of Harold Ramis, who helped give the character and all the Ghostbusters life. With Ramis' death, the project seemed a bit more aimless and unlikely. Ivan Reitman decided that in the wake of his death he would not return to direct and instead only return in a producing capacity, but intended to help Columbia Pictures find a new director for the project. Yet it seemed to be frequently fruitless. Phil Lord and Chris Miller were apparently offered the film and turned it down. Ruben Fleischer was rumoured to be in consideration at one point. Paul Feig, who went on to direct Ghostbusters 2016, turned the film down as he couldn't figure out how to make it work and wasn't all that excited about making it. Sony insisted they were still working on making the movie, with Ethan Coen and Reitman working on the script, with Aykroyd watching over them. Later, Reitman admitted, though, that it was impossible to pull off without Ramis, and they were taking pitches from directors, one of whom was Paul Feig, who presented the idea of a female Ghostbusters team. Reitman himself had said that the version of the script being worked on had a strong female presence, and said that many male actors were scared of stepping into the footsteps of the original Ghostbusters. With a lack of momentum and seemingly interest in a third Ghostbusters, Sony moved forward with the all-female reboot. Aykroyd and Reitman felt it was time to give the reins to a new generation of talent, and also hoped that it could revive interest in the brand for other potential films, forming Ghost Corps, a company intent on making more Ghostbusters projects in the future, with the hope that someday it would lead to the reuniting of the original Ghostbusters team, and in some way, the Ghostbusters cinematic universe. The question of whether or not Ghostbusters 3 has come to fruition or not is sort of a matter of perspective. A lot of people point to the 2009 video game because it featured creative input from Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd and took a lot of influence from their Ghostbusters 3 script. And it also did feature a young cast member fighting alongside the Ghostbusters, the player, you. But most importantly for many is that it featured the return of the original cast and included Bill Murray. In fact, Bill Murray's involvement with the game is apparently what spurred Sony's interest to pursue making a third film at all. And the game garnered praise for its story, especially, and was met with decent reviews overall. So, for a lot of people, this was the closest thing we were ever going to get to a real Ghostbusters 3, especially considering the actors were a considerable age by the time the game came out. But here, they could kind of be a bit younger and a bit more vibrant, which perhaps wouldn't have been possible in the film. However, with the release of Ghostbusters Afterlife, the first film since Ghostbusters 2 to take part in the original continuity, it's sort of become a de facto Ghostbusters 3. Then again, perhaps the Ghostbusters 3 that we imagined and heard about for so long was just never meant to be, for better and for worse. If nothing else, maybe we should just be grateful that the franchise is alive and kicking at all, nearly 40 years after it was conceived. Some people out there seem to think that there was a perfect version of Ghostbusters 3 that maybe we were robbed of. And while we often wait with great anticipation for films in development hell, perhaps the third film was just better off not being made, because by most accounts it wouldn't have delivered, and certainly not after the decades worth of hype. Then again, if you did need to find some closure, try pop in the video game or check out the new film and hope that busting still makes you feel good.
All trivia may be useless, but no trivia is more useless than useless IMDb trivia. That's a piece of trivia too.
And with that, we come to the end of our show, and as we end every podcast, we do a little bit of useless IMDb trivia, where we take a movie we discussed on the show, if only briefly, and look up some trivia on it. But of course, we try to find the most useless bit of trivia on IMDb. Today we're looking at Ghostbusters 2. And I think I found a winner, folks. The World of the Psychic segment, Peter interviews a woman named Elaine, who was told the end of the world would occur on February 14, 2016. That day turned out to be 5 months and 1 day before Ghostbusters 2016 was released. I guess that's someone being like, Ghostbusters 2016 was the end of the world. Yeah. Wow, imagine being that pathetic. It's not even a good connection. But anyway, that is our show. That's certainly some useless trivia, and that's certainly been a podcast that I did. Was it good or bad? I'm not entirely sure, but if you did like it, please give it a like. And of course, we have a lot more podcasts and a lot more coming on this channel if you want to subscribe. Ghostbusters Ways, we got some more content from the channel. We got a review of Ghostbusters Afterlife. We have our Ecto Cooler video. And if you want more podcasts from me, we've just started up The Watcher on Hawkeye, where we're breaking down the latest episode of the show week to week. Either way, that is our show. Don't miss the next one. Be sure to press subscribe and come back for more. It won't be this long again, I promise. Either way, I've been your cult leader, Tom Pat. Remember, I can't remember. How do I sign off this podcast again? Really, it has been a while. I'm your cult leader, Tom Pat. I said that part, didn't I? Yeah. I can't spell cult without you.